my living room.
I do not like driving this truck at all.
I moved into this apartment about a month ago, and we've spent the last 4 weeks making it as homey and happy of a place as is possible. I'm so excited to show you guys around and show you all of the projects that we've done in this apartment to make it extra cozy. So let's get started. So just to give you guys a better idea of the space, this apartment is about 600 square feet, and it's basically just a big rectangle that is divided by several half walls. It's technically a 1-bedroom, but most people would probably consider it to be a studio because there's not an actual door that separates the living space from the bedroom space, but there is a hallway with a closet that sort of separates the rooms. By far, the thing that sold me on this apartment was the 5 huge windows that it has. As you can see behind me, we have a nice view of a brick wall and the window of my neighbor across the way where she frequently lingers, completely naked. So this living room is about 12 feet wide by about 13 feet long. The caveat to that is there is a half wall that separates the kitchen from the living space, and that wall is only about 8.5 feet long, which made couch shopping a very interesting experience because the couch could only be about 8 feet wide. My other must-have for the couch was that it had to have one of those little sticky outy chase things. Luckily, I was able to find one that was in my price range. I got it off of Wayfair, and I will have it linked in the description box if you guys like it. I've heard mixed reviews about Wayfair, and so far I've had a pretty good experience with their customer service, so I would recommend. The lamp that I found, I really like the look of it when it's turned off, but my only beef is that when I turn it on, the lights are just a little bit too bright, and I've tried putting dimmer light bulbs in there, but I'm gonna try to convince Dennis to let us hang some string lights in the living room instead. Because this wall wasn't wide enough to fit an actual end table next to the couch, we just took an old bar stool that I had from one of my other apartments and set it in between the couch and the wall. And it's perfectly big enough to hold 1 Sonos speaker, 1 wood crackling candle, and 1 glass of water. We still don't currently have a coffee table, but stay tuned for updates on us getting real crafty. So after all of the main furniture pieces were placed in the room, the last thing was obviously just to add the finishing touches, which were a couple of paintings and hanging plants, of course.
All right, so I just made it to Lowe's. I'm going to go see if they have any house plants. I would really like to get some of those long, sort of dangly green leafy plants. It's still just the beginning of January. I don't even know if they're gonna have anything, but I'm gonna go inside. This is, unfortunately, their entire plant section, and all they have are succulents. So I totally struck out at Lowe's. I found some other stuff I needed, but I remembered that like a half a mile away from the Lowe's, there's this like really awesome off-the-road greenhouse. You pull up and it basically just looks like an abandoned house. It looks kind of sketchy. Remember, I went in there and I was so impressed with their plant selection. So it says they're open today. I'm gonna try and see if maybe I can score some good plants from this place. Guys, this place is even better than I remembered. They have basically every kind of plant you could want, and they're really reasonably priced. I'm really excited.
And no, I promise this isn't about to turn into one of those macrame making tutorials. I did not make these myself. I bought them from a popular online retailer that promptly shipped them to me in 2 business days. I think people assume because I'm artsy that I can just make everything, but I'm not good at knitting. However, there was a small part of the macrame hanger that I did have to DIY, which was just the little extender part that goes from the hook to where you want the plant to actually hang down to. So I bought some string from the dollar store and I layered it one on top of the other to make it the same-ish thickness as the rest of the macrame plant hanger. And once I tied it all together, it blends in pretty well. If you're curious about the 2 paintings that are hanging in the living room, the first one was painted by Dennis's mom and the second one was painted by my Nana. Because this is real life and I live in Iowa in the winter, we also have a little rug that sits by the door to collect shoes and dirt and puddles. I know it's not very aesthetic, but it's true. Sitting directly across from our couch where we keep our television and the wandering Jew that I am currently propagating, is this lovely vintage dresser that I've had now for many years. It was originally green and then I spray painted it purple when I first brought it into my old room, and now that it's in its new space, it needed a new fresh face. And for some reason, I couldn't get the color emerald green out of my head. Once I lock into something that I want to do home improvement wise, I will obsess over that idea until its completion. So once I decided what color this dresser was going to be, I acted like there may have still been a decision to be made, but in my heart, I knew the truth. The lovely dentist helped me paint this dresser, which despite the fact that I bought the most expensive paint that Lowe's sells, it still took like 2 or 3 coats to finally get it to perfect. This thing is done, I think it is safely the most insanely awesome piece of furniture in this apartment. I almost feel guilty just putting my 32-inch flat screen TV on there because it really looks like it belongs in the home of someone way more elegant and established than me. And that's what the living room looks like. So my main goal for this bedroom was I really just wanted it to be a place where you could come and relax. The living room has a lot of bright colors going on. So what you'll find in this room is that almost everything sort of has a utilitarian purpose. When we strip this room down to its bones, what we have is the bed placed in the middle of the wall on the left-hand side right when you walk in. I had a little bit of a vendetta against this bed when we moved in. It is beautiful and simple and I love that, but in an apartment that's only 500 to 600 square feet, you need every inch of storage you can get. And I think one thing most people really underutilize is the underneath the bed storage. Now the problem with the original bed was that it did have space underneath, but there was a panel that wrapped around the entire bed that blocked you from accessing that space, so your only options were to physically lift the bed up or to lift up the mattress and try to shove things in between the wooden panels. So because I'm not a bodybuilder, that was not exactly the ideal scenario, but I did like the soft headboard. So what we did is we took the headboard off of that bed, kept it, and then got a new actual bed frame that lifted the bed a few more inches off the floor and had open access all around to the underneath the bed area. However, that did create a new problem, which was now when you walk in, you can see directly underneath the bed and basically all of the junk that's underneath there was visible. So right now, my current solution is to buy a bed skirt. Something I thought I would never own, let alone purchase as a 21-year-old woman. I think a better replacement for this bed skirt would have been something with a darker shade of gray. So maybe down the line, I will go ahead and switch it out. Flanking on either side of the bed, you will find what was my other absolute obsession for this apartment. Floating end tables was just one of those things that I had to have. I don't think I need to explain why these are like the coolest thing in the history of the universe, but the main thing for me was that because they don't have legs, you can vacuum directly underneath them. One thing that probably goes without saying is that I was on a very strict budget when I was furnishing this apartment, and when I started looking at inspiration photos and shopping online for these end tables, I realized at best I was gonna get away paying about $160 a piece for these things unless I made them myself or had my awesome dad help me make them. When I was back visiting at home for the holidays, my dad and I went to Lowe's and we picked up these awesome boards of pine wood. They're not solid boards of pine, they're actually little pieces that have been fingered and glued together. But I think my dad and I both agreed that they looked way too cool to just be covered up with white paint. So we ended up staining them with this warm light wood stain, and I still get so happy every time I see them. But by far the best part was I was all in on this project for about $26, contingent on the fact that you have a dad with about 40 years of woodworking experience and an entire wood shop in the basement of your house. The only issue came when I tried to hang these things myself. This building was built in 1916, and one huge pro of living in a building that's over 100 years old is the awesome molding, huge windowsills. But a couple of cons are this obnoxious pipe and the fact that most all of the walls in here are made completely out of concrete. I think this was the result of their intention to make this building completely fireproof. But the reason that we don't really have any shelves or heavy things hanging on the walls in here is because you really can't hang anything heavy when all you're drilling into is this much drywall. So I'll admit that the hanging of these night tables is probably a bit unorthodox, but They're on there, and I'm just not gonna touch them until we move out. Right above both of the end tables, we have 2 bronze hanging wall sconces. Because I'm me and I couldn't just have normal side table lamps, I probably spent a total of like 4 hours scouring the internet to find these lamps. In my humble opinion, wall sconces are enormously overpriced, and luckily I was able to find exactly what I wanted on clearance from lamps.com. The only problem was the light bulbs were very, very bright. They did come with Edison light bulbs, which is where the filament is sort of in this cool shape and it gives off a very warm hue of light. But for some reason, I just had this fantasy where I wanted to be able to stare directly into the eye of my light bulb and not have it shatter my eye sockets. So we had to go back to the drawing board. I tried to go for something that was really low in the lumens category. If you're looking at light bulb packaging, the watts will tell you how much energy it uses, and the lumens will tell you how bright it is. Since the outside of the light bulb is still clear glass, there's nothing to diffuse the light, and it was still really bright to look at. So my solution to this was to buy a can of white spray paint and spray paint the outside of the light bulbs. Not so much that you couldn't see through it at all, because we still wanted to be able to see the shape of the filament. That's what makes Edison light bulbs so cool. But just enough so that way when you look at it, the light is diffused enough that it doesn't hurt your eyes. I feel like that took way longer to explain than was necessary. Lastly, on this side of the room, we have this wonderful bookcase that my parents generously let me take from their home. Originally, I thought I was gonna want to paint this bookcase a solid color, but it turns out the 70s are back.
Inside the bookcase, you have all of the normal bookcase things, such as books, vintage cameras, a photo of you and your significant other, and a giant fern.
Oh, one thing I almost forgot to mention was in the corner of this room we have this white furry stool, and I never thought that this would be something I would somehow acquire in my lifetime because, okay, I do look like someone that would own a white furry stool, but I promise it was never my intention. I got this as a white elephant gift for Christmas this year, and it's actually come in really, really handy. To the right of the bookcase next to the window, we have a little workstation, which is basically just my desk and a desk chair. I try not to keep anything on the desk, and so I keep all of my extraneous art supplies either in the closet, under the bed, or in the bookcase, and the desktop can stay completely clear when it's not being used. This desk is pretty large relative to the space, and I was really worried that it was gonna take up too much room and be really awkward, but what we've noticed is since the top is glass, you can see through it, and it almost has that illusion of sort of melting into the space. So that is the bedroom. We've got our beautiful radiator greeting you in the foyer before you come in because, again, this is real life in Iowa and it's freezing cold here.
As this video comes to an end, there are still a few things that I wanted to say. The first being that I am so incredibly grateful to finally have a space where I feel like I can create a home that I love to be in. Secondly, I need to say a humongous thank you to my lovely partner, Dennis, who has been a huge help through every step of this process. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I'm someone who's really particular about the space that I live in. I know that I will never be 100% satisfied when I look around my apartment. There will always be things I want to change, but when I'm here, I feel happy, and that's really all I could ask for. I really did spend a lot of time making this video. I hope that it shows, and I will see you guys again very soon in the next one. Bye!